Good morning. I'm Dusky Terry, President of ITC Midwest. For the third straight year, we are pleased to be the presenting sponsor for the Iowa Ideas Conference and extraordinarily proud of our partnership with the Gazette. As an electric transmission company serving 2/3 of the state, ITC Midwest is invested in and has a very real stake in the future of Iowa. We've supported this conference since its inception because we embrace its mission of gathering hundreds of Iowans together to explore the key questions and the big ideas that will shape the future of our state. ITC Midwest was formed in 2007 to improve electric transmission reliability and increase transmission system capacity in Iowa. And we followed through on that commitment with more than $4.1 billion in capital investments to date. Our investments in the system not only serve the changing needs of customers, they also provide additional capacities to support economic growth and development of low-cost renewable energy resources. Our investments have resulted in a 62% drop in transmission-related outages since ITC acquired the system and began operating it. From extreme weather events such as last year's derecho to the unprecedented transition to renewable energy, from the rapid adoption of electric vehicles to the increasing focus on energy system resilience, the electric utility industry is suddenly in the national spotlight. All of these forces reinforce the critical role of the transmission grid to support the changing landscape and ensure consumers have access to low-cost, clean, and reliable electricity. You know, we often talk about here at ITC about the power of connection, meaning connections are needed to deliver power to communities. There's also tremendous power when people connect to solve problems. Over the next couple of days, I hope you will engage in the breakout sessions, speak up during discussions, and share your ideas to create a brighter future. Open your mind to different points of view as we all work together to come up with the best solutions for making Iowa an even better place now and in the future. I want to thank you for your participation to help shape the future and wish you a great conference.
Hi, my name is Liz Kennedy. I am a product manager here at the Gazette, and I am happy to welcome you to this panel. This is part of the workforce track here at Iowa Ideas. I hope everyone enjoyed the keynote this morning with Thomas Apt. It was really interesting. If you missed it, we are going to, of course, be replaying the conference sessions at a later time on our YouTube channel, as well as on iowaideas.com. So, and then please stay tuned later today after this session is going to be our keynote, former astronaut Peggy Whitson. I'm super excited about that. And so won't you join us for that as well? So today we are here with an amazing team of women, and we're going to be talking about learning by doing. You know, learning by doing has been a concept around since the late 1800s when philosopher John Dewey brought the idea to the table. But anytime we incorporate learning into by doing into curriculum, it's considered innovative. And so I'm going to be going around this panel talking with each of us about how learning by doing is happening in Iowa and what we can learn from each other. So first with us, we have Jo Christine Miles. She is a director of Principal Community Relations and the Principal Financial Group Foundation, leading the organization's corporate and nonprofit philanthropic initiatives. Also, we have Gina Weekly, who is a nonprofit and youth development professional with over 15 years experience increasing the capacity of youth serving organizations and programs to develop and deliver high quality educational enrichment activities. And finally, we have Joy Briscoe, who is the consummate diversity, equity, and inclusion professional with more than 15 years experience in developing culturally inclusive programming. She currently serves as a talent acquisition and outreach specialist for Waterloo Schools. Welcome, everyone.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
Awesome. So we'll kick off the discussion today with just kind of a general question of what's happening in Iowa right now when it comes to learning by doing. And I'm going to throw this to Jo Christine first, because she's helping fund some of these initiatives. So could you talk a little bit about some of the things that Principal is funding with regards to this topic?
Definitely. Thanks for having me and for hosting such a wonderful event. To answer your question, what I'll do is focus on the things that we are specifically funding as opposed to everything that's happening in the state. I wouldn't purport to be an expert in those things. We are doing 3 things in an effort to allow innovation to continue to happen in the space of experiential learning, and to also promote an expansion of access to this type of learning. So one is kind of old school traditional stuff. We are big supporters of JAG nationwide, and we are therefore big supporters of iJAG here. Anyone who's familiar with the JAG programming knows that internships, mentorship, and visits to potential career places for one to have a career are a big part of the model. So I put that kind of in the tried and true traditional bucket. We're continuing to fund that. In terms of expansion of access for students, no matter where they're located, and in terms of innovating a bit, there's two programs that we're rolling out this year that we're really excited about. One is really led by our DEI department, and that's the opening of a principal community learning center that is on our campus. As a matter of fact, it's right behind me, down on the first floor in the corner, dead smack in the middle of the activity center on campus here at Principal in Des Moines. And what we do is we invite students and their adults, not their custodial adults, but those who guide them through their academic or their learning journeys to come on campus and experience financial literacy classes, professional development and career development classes, as well as mentorship. So that is kind of in your face, right here in your backyard, giving folks an opportunity to see themselves in that building or those buildings that they pass by every day or throughout their lives here in Des Moines. The other thing we're really excited about is a digital program that we're rolling out that has a data science curriculum that's happening in 11 cities across the country, Des Moines being one of them. It's targeted to high school students between 9th and 12th grade. They'll learn the basics of data science. The experiential part comes in, and then it's accompanied by a lab, an experiential lab that provides real world problems for them to solve with this information that they've learned in the curriculum. And those real world problems are developed by actuaries and data scientists and analysts right here at Principal. So it can't get any realer than that. It's based on the things that they do in their job. In addition to this kind of financial services and insurance real world example, it also has examples that may speak a bit more to a high school student's interest. So we have an example involving how sports teams use data and analyze that data to make trade decisions, to make field placement and play strategy decisions in games. And then we have a music or entertainment example involving a website that streams music and using the data to determine how they place music on that website and how they advertise the website and how they reach out to other consumers. So examples that really get to the heart of a student's interest so they can see data science as something that's not just a forced academic area that they learn in school through math, but something that could lead to a well-paying career choice for them in area of academic study, with the hope of getting to our real goal at the Principal Foundation, which is to promote financial security and economic mobility. So I'll stop there. 3 examples, tried and true, in person, on campus, and then that digital example that really expands access. No matter where that child is, if they have a computer, they can access that last example and share it with friends and family. Thank you.
Wow, that is really interesting. Who else wants to talk about some of the things that are happening here in Iowa? Joy or Gina?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and talk about it as well. And Joe, Christine, I have to say, that's phenomenal, some of the things that you're doing. I'm really excited about what that's going to do for our young people here in Iowa. From our standpoint, we're looking at it as an opportunity to take learning outside of the classroom and also do a lot of connection with career development as well. A new initiative we're rolling out with Waterloo schools is that we're doing career development from K-12 from kindergarten on up through 12th grade, right? And I don't think it's been that intentional before. We used to do field trips and things of that nature, all the districts, that's how K-12 education does, but not making sure that it was actually tied back to potential career paths for our young people. And so now, from the very moment you come in our doors and you walk into our school district, we're trying to help you get prepared for the future. Now, I don't want to say we're looking at you and saying you're going to be an astronaut in kindergarten. That's not what's going to happen, right? But what we are saying is by the time you graduate in the 12th grade, you will have a diploma and you will have a plan. And whether that plan is that you're going to go into apprenticeship, you're going to go into an IT field, or you're going to go on to a 2-year or 4-year or a technical college, you will have a plan. And that's part of our responsibility as a school district in helping you prepare for the future. So we'll start there. So I'll kind of take Jo Christine's model and do 3 examples of how we're doing that. We're rolling out a new career development program this year. Well, we purchased it this year and we'll be rolling it out next year, called Zello, that'll help students identify their gifts, their strengths early on in their educational career. Now, again, this isn't going to tell you that you're going to be a doctor, things of that. This is a tool that we can use to track early on what you like growing up. So if I'm a student in kindergarten that likes working with my hands, and as I go up through my educational career, we find in the 5th grade maybe that I'm good at drawing, and maybe by the 7th grade there's notes in my that says, you know, I really had a propensity leaning towards manufacturing, and I'm gonna take the manufacturing track because I think we're really doing some great things in that career area in our area now. So by the time a student has done this, and we've also built in field trips from our Learning Life Labs coordinator that we have. So by the time a student is entering to the 7th or 8th grade, they've been to a farm, they visited one of our business partners that supports manufacturing. They've had people come into their class and speak. They've had the opportunity to have mentorship as well. And so now we're actually preparing them by the 7th or 8th grade for what their high school career can look like. And so building on that, we have that tool that we use. Our next step is that we've implemented a program called Ignite, and it truly does just that. It ignites students' interest if you're interested in a manufacturing area. And it's an introductory course that happens outside of our building. It actually happens at TechWorks, which TechWorks is like this innovation hub that's attached to our chamber that all of our manufacturers are a part of. And so basically they're partners for this program. So all of our larger manufacturers in the community, our chamber, Gross Cedar Valley, our Hawkeye Community College, you and I, we're working with all of them as a community to support our youth development. And so when you enter into this Ignite program, because they've been identified from our tool that this is where the area that they're interested in going in, we then take them on field trips. They then have mentorship. They then get hands-on opportunities. And a great thing about this tool or this class, Ignite, is that it also is virtual. So in an instance of a pandemic, that's a once in a lifetime thing, you can also access all your learning modules via online. And a second really good thing about it is why it's marketed as a pre-apprenticeship program for advanced manufacturing. It also has electrician, construction, sustainable construction, and a bunch of those other trades programs that we know that we need to start encouraging our students to take a look at. And again, I said options, like I'm a person that believes options is good. So my time hat is that I work at the Waterloo Career Center, which is a career technical education hub. And that basically 90% of our courses are college level courses. So we are also working to dispel that myth that if you go into a trade, you cannot earn a college degree. Have to, but again, key word here is options. We want our students to have as many options as possible. So going into that Ignite program, they're taught by an instructor that is a longtime engineer, that he introduces all kinds of different concepts for them. And then they're going out to John Deere and they're going to some of their conferences and they're bringing them to all the different areas within that advanced manufacturing to include IT. Because one thing students didn't think about before they started doing this process is that if you're a company and you have over 15, 20 employees, you typically have some type of IT department. So when you start talking about job security, when you start talking about earning those potential salaries that you can sustain a family off of, much like what Joe Christine said, IT, technology is a way to go. So those are two that we're doing now. The third one I'll talk about is our apprenticeship and our internship program. We work very hard with our business partners to help identify what our students' talents are, and then either have students either participate in an apprenticeship or internship program where they are going off our campuses and going into the businesses to earn a course, a credit, while they're actually doing the things that they're interested in. We work really hard for that. And so again, using the example for IT, we are launching a 1 week long IT job shadow for students to kind of figure out what they like. And that job shadow covers data analytics, it covers cybersecurity, because that's huge right now, right? We don't want people to get in here in these spaces. So while we know it's huge, how do we get young people to understand this is a great viable career that you should consider? And I'm much like you, Joe Christine, we offer those things at the Career Center, but there has to be equitable access points. And so that's where we're putting a lot of intention and focus so that it can get to our students where they're at and that they can get attracted to then come over and take college level courses with us while we're paying for it. So we're working on not incurring debt, right? Limiting as much debt as possible for our young people and getting them started off to a strong start for their future. So those are a few things that we're doing in Waterloo schools. And I'll hand off to Gina.
Yeah, so Joy, I actually get to build on your thinking there. So as Joy was speaking in regards to the Career Center, that is a lot of high school students that have access to those programs. So in my role, I get to actually have hands-on experience with our younger population, so K through 8th grade. And the way that we are preparing them for the Career Center or for some of those opportunities is leadership development opportunities. Making sure that our students have access to learning a lot of those soft skills that businesses and employers say that the talent pool is lacking these days. So leadership development training, hands-on experiences in some leadership roles that then pique their interest in what they may want to become. We actually are partnering with Waterloo Schools and launching a pilot program this year to see how we could get a collaborative effort between elementary, middle, and high school to do intergenerational modeling, as well as assigning them to mentors within the community so that they could see and have access to local leaders that are in the profession doing some of the things that these students are taking on as roles, even in elementary, kindergarten. So if they're the recycling leader, they get an opportunity to shadow or work alongside someone that works for like the Waterloo recycling company or something of that nature, just so that those kids have that hands-on experience and kind of get an idea of what they want to do when they get older, or the things that they don't like to do, right? In addition to that, the past 5 years, Waterloo has been working towards a summer learning model that is exactly this. It's hands-on learning. It's called the We Believe Academy, where we've grown from serving 25 kids to almost 700 last summer, where it is completely hands-on, engaging, innovative learning. These students spend 3 hours in the morning. It's completely academic based, where they get access to math, STEM, reading, but extremely, again, hands-on learning. They're utilizing STEM kits. They are doing computer programming. They are having access to community leaders, again, where they're getting to do read alouds with them or mentorship with them. But another cool thing about this model is, like Joy said, with the older demographics of students, these students get weekly field trips throughout the community where they get to go and experience things in the community and things that sometimes our underserved students would not have access to, just like Joy was saying. In addition to that, is that it is an intergenerational model. So we actually have a partnership with the University of Northern Iowa, where we hire and train pre-service teachers and pre-service recreational specialists who come in and get that hands-on teaching and leading experience with the youth, but they also are partnered with and mentored by educational professionals. So these are college students that are getting an extra layer of learning and hands-on experience before they actually even get in the field.
I
Wow.
want to add to that too. And I also want to know, when you think of experiential learning and supporting your students, even look at our panel. Like, I'm representing the public sector, Gina's representing the nonprofit sector, and Joe Christine represents the funding sector. This is really how you build infrastructure and sustainable initiatives in your community. It cannot be housed at under one or two. You have to be as inclusive as possible and get as many partners that have interests and stakeholders involved in this game as possible. And that's not easy, right? But when you want to build a sustainable program, it's really necessary. I mean, I've seen it, like she said, we're working with UNI, we're working with Hawkeye, we're working with the University of Iowa. We're including as many programs as possible, or people as possible, to provide as many opportunities as possible for our students. And much like what Gina touched on, we also at the Career Center offer a K-12 teacher education and teacher prep program. Our teacher prep programs also worked with that summer academy and the after school academy, so that our high school students that are interested in teaching can get that hands-on experience actually in the field before they even go into college, as they're earning high school and college credit. This is experiential learning.
Yes, and I failed to mention that, Joy. And we also do offer that as an after-school component as well, where we partner with the Career Center, and those high school students come in and get internship hours, but we still continue that partnership with the university. So those high school students actually had the opportunity to be mentored by some college students as well. And it all only works if it's a collaborative effort. We have local partnerships with the Boys and Girls Club, the Y, the food bank, Operation Threshold. There are so many different entities that take part in that to make sure that we're not only serving that whole child, but also that whole family.
I agree. And I do acknowledge too, our funders make a,
yes.
I love that Joe Christine said, we do traditional stuff, but we're supporting innovative stuff too. Sometimes that's more difficult, but that's where the transformation lies. And so I just want to give kudos to principal for doing that.
I want to throw it over to a couple questions we have from our audience. So I had a similar question for myself. I have a high schooler. Will there be anything similar to Des Moines and Waterloo being brought to Cedar Rapids and Iowa City? Another question was, is the data center curriculum only open to Des Moines 9th through 12th graders, or could someone from Cedar Rapids get involved? If the parent is willing to travel to Des Moines. Okay, so there's a lot of excitement around these types of things. How do parents get connected to, I've struggled with that myself. Like, I know there's IJAG, but it was too late by the time the school year rolled around to get involved. So how do parents get involved with some of these programs?
Well, these questions from the parents highlight the reason why we are doing this program with EverFi. They are I would call them the leader in development of interactive, engaging digital curricula, in working with school districts all around the country and in a couple of other countries to get it available to students. So going back to the primary question, what can parents do? The first thing I'd say, and this is something I've really been advocating for employees at Principal to do, I would suggest that anyone who's at a company that has a community relations department or a foundation could do the same thing. And that is to find out who runs that and talk to them. Because a target for me, something that I told the foundation's board of directors and something I've told executive leadership here at Principal, is that we really have three goals. One is thematic, right? To fulfill the mission, our stated mission for us, that's advancing financial security for all and making that accessible to all. The second one is geographic. We have to do things in places where we are, right? Which is why our target for EverFi is 11 cities around the country. And the 2.0 of that would be to hit some of our international markets. The third thing, people rarely say it, but I'm really hoping to put this at the forefront of conversations in companies and in this sector. And that is what I call sentiment alignment. What do employees care about? If we say that you need to bring your whole self to work, that you can bring your whole self to work. What are you doing outside of work, right? What is that whole self that we don't see, but we are empowered to support? And in my opinion, nothing says that we acknowledge what's important to you and we support what's important to you than when we put company assets behind that, right? In our giving, by our match giving programs, by converting your volunteer time into micro grants to the institution at which you volunteer. So parents, ask your company, how are they showing up for the next generation, right? Yep, they're paying tax revenue, but then they have these other pots of money that they can put into play. As far as EverFi goes, we are focusing in Des Moines, but I'm paying for it. So I have the power to tell them, make sure you show up in Waterloo and Cedar Rapids. And I have my notebook here and I've actually been writing that down. Waterloo is an area of interest to the Principal Foundation, not because we have boots on the ground or physical presence in Waterloo, but because Iowa is our global headquarters. We care about the entire state, and there are all types of wonderfully interesting things happening in Waterloo, Cedar Rapids, Davenport, Quad Cities area that I've had the pleasure of learning about since relocating to Iowa. So that's the first question, the first answer I have to that question. Talk to your folks internally, advocate, let them know, hey, there's some companies out there thinking about sentiment alignment with employees. What are you thinking about? The second answer I have is the data science curricula part has soft launched to students. So right now it's only accessible to teachers and students in those teachers' classrooms. The next phase that'll go live in December will be the experiential lab that I've been talking about, and that will be available to anyone. It was a core concern of ours. So even if you're outside of those 11 cities, even if you are, off the planet, really, so long as you have a Wi-Fi signal, you'll be able to access that, the microsite, the lab, and the financial literacy modules that we have as a part of that. So that's my second answer. It'll be there.
I like that answer.
Yeah, I would actually add too, on top of that, is tapping into your local school districts.
Yeah.
Ask your principals about what are some of the opportunities. I listened in on a session. Is this a path we're looking to go down? These are some people you can reach out to. You're the biggest advocate for your child when it comes to opportunity. So let's hold our districts accountable as well.
Mm-hmm.
As a district, I second that. Hold us accountable. That's what we want to do. We definitely want to serve our students to the best of our ability. And I'm interested, Jo Christine, in tapping into that curriculum as well. I'm a board member for NewBoCo, which I know we offer some things out of Cedar Rapids. I worked in Cedar Rapids area before, still passionate, and much like you said, like I feel like Iowa, one thing about us is that we're big enough where we have some cities, but we're small enough that really it feels like all of our communities are somehow, and that we much more like family. So I am super, super passionate about my family in Des Moines and in the Cedar Rapids area. And so I would love to find out more about that curriculum from a board member, NewBoCo standard, and also just to see about if there's some ways that we could partner or have it offered up here. Because we do have an IT, we have a pretty robust program at the Career Center, but the introduction of it, we're working on implementing that into the younger grades so that they can actually get to the Career Center. So I would love to touch base on that too. So thank you. But Cedar Rapids, NewBoCo, check with them as well and see. And if we don't have a connection, you can email me and I'll talk.
So part of my role at the Gazette as a product manager is to make sure that there aren't barriers when we're moving a product along, right? So that's one of the key questions that I always ask is, are there barriers to continuing? So what are some of the barriers that you're seeing that, collectively we can help solve?
In the space that we operate in, the Principal Foundation, really wanting to target financial security, we are active in several areas. because we view financial security as being a spectrum. Some people have it, some people don't. And how do we help them get from there to here, right? So the barriers I see in nutrition security, for instance, are similar to the ones I see in experiential learning. And the biggest one, in my personal opinion, is lack of vision. We really have to reimagine the world that we see in front of us, and all the things that humans have achieved, all of them, from farming to building cities to putting the 19th Amendment, right, so women could vote, the 14th Amendment to set folks free and have them deemed as citizens, everything, the COVID vaccine, no matter how you feel about any of those things personally, every single one of those things stem from our ability to reimagine what was already in front of us. And so that is the biggest barrier. So when the Principal Foundation speaks of funding innovative ideas, what we're asking people to do, first of all, I only give general operating grants because I'm not the expert. I have some ideas, you know, as a mom, as a wife, as a human living in this world, as a woman wrapped in this caramel packaging, right? I have ideas based on my lived experience, but I'm not the expert. I wouldn't purport to tell Gina or Joy how to do their jobs, or you, Liz. So what I do want to do is say, hey, from what I see, the data, the scuttlebutt that I've done, the due diligence and the research, you're doing a bang up job at what you do. What would you do differently? If we gave you funding that removed the capacity barrier for you, what would your next be to get around this reimagining problem, right? The second barrier, of course, is funding. Not every funder feels that way. Not every funder gives general operating funds. Not every funder is willing to go outside of the kind of core group of what I call sweetheart organizations, which is a lack of reimagination on their part. So we have that as a barrier. And then last, COVID is a barrier. Until we get to endemic status and we stay on the cusp of pandemic, endemic, people won't want to come together. People will remain defensive. That shows up in a lot of ways. People will remain fearful, and that, of course, shows up in a lot of ways. So sitting here on October 15th, 2021, those are the barriers. Two of those are perennial. One of those is temporary.
Any other, Gina or Joy, do you have any thoughts on barriers that you're facing?
On the other side of it, so as a program developer, some of the barriers that we often see is access for some of our families, as well as making sure that parents are educated about what we're offering. A lot of times parents will refuse programming simply because they don't understand how it will benefit their child and ultimately their family. So when we were building the We Believe Academy, we did a lot of work, boots on the ground, connecting with parents and making sure that they understood the potential impact of a program that serves their whole child. They didn't understand, my child has to be there from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Well, this is what your child is getting for those 11 hours out of the day. And making sure that they also understand the impact of any outside programming on their child's development academically. A lot of parents do not realize academically or understand their child's FAST scores or, their reading comprehension levels, those things, and they don't understand how additional programming can enhance and influence their academics. But in addition to that, a lot of parents lack trust in local programming, schools. So that's a huge barrier because we could develop all the great programs that we want to. If we don't have families and students that trust the systems that are implementing it, that's a problem because then we're underserving, right? And Joe Christine's dollars are going to waste. Another one, I said lack of access. We do a lot of great programming in throughout communities, right? But who knows about them? We talk about that a lot. Like, people hear about it after it's happening and media has come out and they show the 20 kids involved. Then all these parents are like, well, where was this program when I was looking for it? So making sure that people know, you know, and it's in the hands of the actual community.
And it's not just the same 20 kids getting the opportunity.
Over and over, yes.
That we are being intentional about going outside of our circle of influence as to who gets opportunities or who gets access to these opportunities. Sorry, Gina, I don't want to cut you off.
And the other one, like Joe was saying, is lack of funding. A lot of funders do not want to fund general operating support. And in the nonprofit world, that's an issue. If we can't pay our people or if we can't increase wages, we don't keep great people to develop innovative programs. We get a lot of funders that want to fund specific programs as well. So like innovative programs, like she was saying, which means you have to either add staff, add materials. But if we have things that we're doing well, how do we get funders to invest in those things as well?
So let's talk about that a little bit more. What are some of the success stories that you share with the community that get people excited? I mean, we can hear from the excitement of people listening in today that they, once they hear about these things, they get excited. To Joy, you got any success stories you want to share?
I do actually. We this summer we worked with one of our organizations that's a partner with you and I to get the Governor's Future Ready Iowa summer internship grant. And so I would say that was a great example of public-private partnership at its best. John Deere came in and they were a huge sponsor via that Ignite program. And these students had a phenomenal opportunity to get learning, to work, to earn for their households. Because again, when we talk about barriers, we have to understand if I'm a student that I work in the summer to pay for clothes or things of that nature, then yes, I might want to learn, but I might not be able to take advantage of the opportunity if there isn't resources. So I think that when Gina and Joe Christine said resources, I mean, that is critical for us to think about, that everybody can't do a non-paid internship, right? And so we have to come up with strategic, systemic ways to break down those barriers and make sure that everyone has access. So as such, we did a program, we ran it for 8 to 10 weeks where students were in IT, they were in advanced manufacturing, they were in marketing, and there's one, teaching as well. And so, and at the end of the program or at the end of the week, the students would come to the Career Center, they would get soft skills training, they would get financial literacy training. And so what happened is I had 15-year-olds talking to me about good debt versus bad debt and talking about when to buy a house and compound interest and things of that nature. And then 15-year-olds that said, you know, before the summer, I thought I wanted to be an NBA star, but now I think I'm gonna be a mechanical engineer, right? That's transformation, right? At 15-year-olds, I mean, there's adults that, you know, won't talk about compound interest or don't understand some of those concepts. So to be 15, just think of what these students' futures look like. Not only are they understanding their finances, but they're already starting on their career and figuring out what are the steps for them. And I had the people that did the program, they're like, oh no, Joy, we identified future engineers out of those group of students that we had this summer. So I would definitely say that that was a success program, but it took all of us walking together hand in hand. Me as a school district, nonprofit partnership, we work with the Shift Opportunity Accelerator, we work with another nonprofit, and then also as funder support, John Deere, Iowa Laser, some of our advanced manufacturing partners came on board and also supported it. And then another layer was that we got support through the Governor's Future Ready Summer Internship Program.
Yeah, in my experience, and a success story with like the We Believe Summer Learning Academy, we saw over 90% of our students that participated either gain or maintain in reading comprehension levels, which is huge. If you know anything about the summer slide for students, we were making amazing gains in the most underserved buildings in the Cedar Valley. What that means for our district is that our students were coming back to the school year ready to learn, opposed to teachers having to make up 3 months of learning that students lost during the summer. These students are coming in and ready to learn and ready to be engaged. In addition to that, we noticed, just like with Joy with her high school students talking about financial literacy, we had students developing their vocabulary, utilizing words that they learned from STEM curriculum, talking about design processes and different things. You're seeing kindergartners running around talking about developing a plan. It's amazing because you see these young people begin to develop a level of confidence that they may not have had prior to experiencing a program like We Believe. More recently, a success story that I was able to experience was Hoover Middle School is a Leader in Me school. And we did a round of mock interviews. They all go through a leadership course at Hoover. And we had over 30 community members come in and spend an hour and a half roughly with these students. And these students got hands-on experience interviewing with a diverse pool of local leaders from different sectors of the community. So we had politicians, we had educational leaders, we had bankers, and these students just got to engage with these community leaders and to see the joy on these middle school students' faces and knowing I can do this when I get older. But not just that, since it was a diverse pool of local leaders, they got to see an image of themselves. So young Black boys were seeing Black male professionals in our field and seeing them in a role of an interviewer and knowing, hey, I can do this. Those are the greatest success stories to me.
So when you're talking about the leadership skills, was that the same program that was doing the intergenerational? Do you feel like that was one of the reasons it was successful in having these kindergartners start to use these terms because they were peer-led? Or
Absolutely. That in addition to, I now currently serve with Leader Valley, and we implement Leader in Me in schools. And these students have that hands-on experience daily of learning leadership skills. So on top of having those mentor opportunities, these students are having access to leadership lessons.
And Gina was one of our summer participants too. Let me add that too. The success story I told, Gina actually was a part of that too. She actually came over and did some mentoring and teaching some of these concepts to the students that were learning soft skills this summer too.
That's excellent. Yeah, I do know that there have been some of those effective programming, especially for the summer internship programming here in Cedar Rapids. I know there are some participants maybe listening in that may have had experience with that. So if you have questions for this group or any comments, please put them in the Hoover chat. We'd love to share those with the rest of the group. Okay, so just shifting gears, this is Iowa Ideas. It's all about coming up with ideas. And I know a lot of times when we ask panelists to come, we are talking about their existing programs. And of course, we don't know enough about their existing programs, and it's delightful to share about the successes that are happening. But just put your thinking mindset on now. What are some ideas that you think Iowa could benefit from for the future? So say 10 years from now, learning by doing, what are some ideas you think would be worth more attention developing programs for? Anybody want to take a crack at that?
So we actually just had, I work for the Grove Cedar Valley Joy was speaking to, which is our local chamber. And we recently received the results of a local study of what the businesses were in need of most. And it's the talent pool development. Making sure that our students now are developed to be a part of the workforce. They're seeing a higher number of folks that are not ready to be in working position, let alone leadership positions. So making sure that our students have access to leadership opportunities and that we're developing those soft skills in our students to make sure that they're ready to be contributing members of society. We could do all of these great things, but if our students don't know how to hold conversations, don't know how to properly greet people, don't know how to show up to work, what good is it doing to provide them with programming opportunities?
Yeah, definitely COVID has had an impact.
Absolutely.
Anyone
And I
else want to
think-
take a crack at that, Joy?
I think, Joe Christina, I love if our overall theme today was reimagining, right? Because I think what COVID did was it forced us to have to reimagine how we do things from the fact that we're now meeting here, right? I think education and workforce, those are things that we need to reimagine too. And that maybe in the past, the business community, we really haven't had to do that. Well, in this moment, the students that are now coming out of high school, coming out of college, they are looking for things. I wrote down when you said about that sentimental factor, they're looking for that. And historically in business, that didn't have to be a concern. You offered a good salary, you got good brand recognition, and people are going to come work for you. Well, those days are drawing, those days aren't as prevalent, right? And so now it's forcing us, and I think it'll be good in the long run. We're just in the hump, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the hump of needing workers, of needing that. But I think it's forcing us, much like when you have, co-workers that had never used a Zoom before that now are extremely proficient on Zoom. I think we're in a moment of transformation that if we step up to the occasion, we could really do a lot of good for Iowans in the future and be ahead of other individuals in the game. We just have to reimagine how we're even doing workforce. And I know that's difficult because workforce, businesses, we're like, we want to get to money. But in the long run, if we reimagine how we do business, if we focus more on like quality of life for our employees, what do our employees care about? We will see more progress. And that word of mouth that you are a company that cares about your employees, that you invest in culture, that is priceless PR. You cannot purchase that type of PR. And so I think we definitely need to do a lot more focusing on that. If there was something that you said reimagining, even if we were as Iowans having a forum that was saying, hey, let's think about everybody that's has any kind of stakeholder in employment. Let's think as out the box as we can about how we can improve our workforce culture as Iowans. Let's throw everything to the table. And then versus having that lens of, because sometimes HR, human resources, I wear a hat of that too. We're like, that won't work, right? If we take that won't work off the table and we have to make it work, that's how we have Iowa ideas. That's how we move ahead. So I would love to see that. And I would love to see us focus on that as communities, as our rural communities, as Iowa, as Waterloo, as Des Moines, as Cedar Rapids, coming together, because these are problems that are impacting us all, and throwing our best concepts out there, taking the ceiling off. There's no ceiling. We know there is, but we're going to act like there isn't, right? About how can we improve workforce culture for Iowans so that we can fill some of these talent shortages.
I would echo everything that Gina and Joy said. And the one thing that I would add to it in terms of ideas in harking back to innovation is how we expand our understanding of the world these folks will be operating in. And yep, they're Iowans. Yep, they're sitting in Iowa, but Iowa sits in a larger context, and that context sits in a larger context. For those of you who don't know me, I relocated here from New York City last year, bringing with me two little boys who I absolutely adore, and my husband. Actually, he brought us here, and then I just happened to find the job of my dreams, but we aren't going to talk about that sequence. Something that I tell them all the time is it is cosmic chance that they were born to my husband and me at the time in New York City, in the United States of America, in the years that they were born in, right? Which is fairly recently. And if they accept that it was pure cosmic chance, right? Then they should also be willing to accept that chance shouldn't govern how they see themselves and how they see the future. And so for all the programs that we are funding, whether it be nutrition security, whether it be the things we're talking about today, something that I push our grantees to consider is that your 30, 40, 50, 60 years on this earth are fundamentally different than the next 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years will be. So don't prepare for what you lived through. Prepare for what you can't even imagine yet, right? So these Iowans are going to live in an Iowa that is so different from the Iowa that exists now. You know, I've met 6 other families who relocated from New York. Who would have thought New Yorkers were flocking to cornfield country, right? Who were flocking to Iowa. What impact will their presence and the presence of the San Franciscans I've met and the Chicagoans and the Texans, what impact will that have on culture, right? And then what impact will climate change? No matter your belief on whether it exists or not, if enough people outside of the state believe it exists, how will that impact Iowa? What impact will continued globalization have? It's my understanding that the biggest buyer of Iowan pork are the Chinese and the Japanese, right? So what will that world look like, and how can we build an appreciation, not an understanding because we haven't experienced it, but an appreciation for what that future will look like for our youth and for our communities.
And I failed to mention mental health. So like making sure that that is included in all levels of programming. Just stigma in communities around mental health and access or utilizing therapy or services that will be beneficial to us. Making sure that we're educating around mental health topics, but also making it a norm to discuss mental health and wellness.
Yes, there is no mental health, there's no physical health, there's health. You know, how do we grow healthy people?
And I also want to say, because I've talked to people sometime when there's so much to think about. We aren't asking that you think about, we want you to consider this, but that doesn't mean that you have to do everything. It's the whole, how do you eat an elephant, right? One bite at a time. So if you took something from something we said this morning, just decide you're going to do 1 or 2 things differently now, or you're going to mentor someone now, or maybe I'm going to reach out to my school district, or I'm just going to share something about the program that's in Des Moines. I'm going to share it out my social media network so more parents can have access to it. All those things matter, right? Like I understand we're talking about big change and things of that nature. And I'm a person, I love big vision. And so sometimes people are like, okay, wait, Joy, slow down. But how you can get started, things that you can do is just pick 1 or 2 things to start doing. And that's a great way to start ingraining learning into your community. If you're a business owner, offer your school district to actually host some of the students. Most school districts, like I said, I can speak for Waterloo and I can speak for Cedar Rapids because have worked in both of those. And then from Joe being here and some of the partners we have in Des Moines, you would be surprised at the type of curriculums and the great things already happening within your school district. So plug into that, share it out, get the word, say, hey, you know, I have an IT section. Maybe we'll host a job shadow. Come on over. I'll open my doors for our students to come in. Those things make a lasting impression on our workforce of tomorrow. So.
Yeah, we do host a few high school students for journalism here at the Gazette, which is really interesting. And I was interested in, because we have such a strong digital department here, about developing a program for high schoolers and that. But when I think about it, what the barrier is for me as a product manager is like, how could I make something bite-sized enough that it would be meaningful for a high school student to participate, but also worth my time as a product manager to put the time and effort into developing that. So can you speak to any of those kind of like detailed issues as you're trying to work through some of these learning by doing prospects?
Yeah, and we have had that. Of course, sometimes people are saying, you know, we can only have a certain age level even come into our offices. So a way you can work around that is if you actually partner for a work-based learning program, this statewide, you can actually have 16 and up come in most work areas, unless it's something extremely hazardous, you can work around that. What I would do, you can actually have your, like the class curriculum, they might have a project that they can embed in the curriculum that where you're not doing a lot of the heavy lifting, right?
Mhm.
So for our apprenticeship program, one of our partners, John Deere, they actually do take the students around, but the day-to-day practices that they learn with us actually in class. And so we together where we're teaching them a piece of it, and then they go see the practical application piece of it, because that's really what we need from a workforce to offer is actually we're showing them the ideal and the concept, and then you're actually showing them the application. And so there are ways that you can have partner with classes where they can embed that experience into their curriculum so that the heavy lift is on the school district. That's why Gina said, reach out to your school district, say, this is what I'm thinking to do. What do you think about it? Is there a way that our journalism or our composition instructor, where students might be getting class for comp, is there a way that we can have an experience where they come out to our comp department or our IT department, but you design a project or something that's connected to that? Because we understand you're already asked to do a lot. We're all doing more with less, right? And so we understand that as well. That's the role of the educational system, right? So we can help develop that.
All right, so we're getting near the end here. If there's any more questions from the audience, we welcome that. Do you have any, does anyone on the panel have any questions for each other?
I want to come visit your site, Joe. There and check out the Innovation Center. So expect the Waterloo visit.
I have a question for Gina, and that is, what are your organization's goals for 2022? It sounds like you've gotten the We Believe Summer Learning Academy up and running. You've gotten it to scale quite quickly from 25 to 700. So what's your 2.0 on that, or what are the corollaries that you're developing with respect to that?
Yeah, so with the We Believe Academy, I actually no longer serve with the district, but I know that the vision for the district is that all students within the district have access to that level of programming, which is difficult, as you know, as a funder, making sure that we have the funds to provide that level of access, because it's full day programming. You're talking about field trips once a week for thousands of students. You're talking about paying teachers to serve. So also the workforce, right? Having teachers wanting to commit to summer long programming. So the hope and vision was to have that model accessible to all students in Waterloo schools. Currently, we serve what is dubbed the bubble kids, which research shows that if you take this group of students, those who are normally left out, so they're not your high flyers and they're not your highest academically, they're the students that kind of sit in the middle and get left behind a lot of times, that we could take 6 weeks of intentional learning and move them forward. We're able to do that. But our hope was to tailor the model to fit and serve all students in Waterloo. In my current role, our hope is to have those leadership development experiences accessible to all students in the Cedar Valley. So that's both rural and urban, making sure that students just simply have access and exposure to leadership opportunities, and developing them and making sure that they can see the leader in themselves. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Before we end today, I wondered if between Joy and Gina, if you could share what are some of the things that you're noticing that students are exceptionally curious about, or what things are they concerned about? I'll just share an example. One of my 13-year-old was walking home with one of his friends, and his friend was extremely concerned about climate change and what that means for the future. You know, will there be a world that he can live in that is, you know, sustainable? So it struck me as how important that issue was to a 13-year-old. So what are some of the other issues that you're hearing about?
Mental health.
Mental health.
I worked with some of the students that we work with, the high school students. A few years ago, we did an entrepreneurship program in 2019. And the goal was just to introduce them to concepts in entrepreneurship, to support innovative thinking. Well, the end project was that the students, and when I say end, the goal was to think about what business would mean a lot to you. And I was expecting sports, I was expecting gaming, and the business that the students wanted to create, these are high school students, and most of them are still in high school, was something around mental health. And I was floored that where the bulk of their concern was now. And so we helped them create a business where they did mental health coaching. I mean, we had some connections to MIT who them and work with them or whatever have you. So it was a great program, but it was just so interesting because I never thought that these 14 and 15 and 16-year-olds were that concerned and worried about mental health that they decided that that was the business they wanted to create for their community.
Yeah, and I had to think about it, and it all goes back to that social emotional mental health aspect. A lot of students that I've recently had the opportunity to engage with, you can see the stress of their teachers, of their parents in them. And when they get the opportunity to be in front of a caring adult, it comes out. I had a young man actually express to me, he was like, I can't wait to get my COVID vaccine. And I'm thinking in my head, why are you even thinking about that? Because society is feeding them this all the time. In their homes, they're talking about this, but also the stresses of the academics. Our students can feel it from their teachers. They can feel it from their parents because their parents are getting it from the teachers. That level of confidence and lacking confidence in their ability to obtain whatever they need to or achieve wherever they need to in the school year. So a lot of it goes to mental health and just feeling and being simply okay and enough.
Well, with that, I think we'll call things to a close. This has been a really great panel. Thank you so much, Gina, Joe, Christine, and Joy for joining us for this chat about learning by doing. I hope it spurs many more conversations about experiential learning in the classroom and beyond. I want to thank ITC Midwest for sponsoring Iowa Ideas, without whom this virtual free conference would not be possible. Next up is going to be our closing keynote. You won't want to miss it. Former astronaut and Iowan Peggy Whitson. So please stay with us for that. But thank you so much for joining us for today's session.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Bye-bye.